Narcissists don't need love. They don't need respect. What they truly need is your reaction, because every time you explain yourself, argue, or try to make them understand, you feed them. You become fuel for their ego. They live for emotional chaos. They provoke you not to solve a problem, but to keep you in the game, to keep you responding, to keep you explaining, to keep you drained. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. You don't have to fight them to win. You don't even have to speak. The most powerful way to shut down a narcissist is not through confrontation, but through strategic silence and psychological indifference. When you stop reacting, you remove their oxygen. You disrupt their control cycle. You become unreadable, unreachable, untouchable, and nothing destroys a narcissist faster than being completely ignored by the person they can't manipulate anymore. This is the power of non-reaction warfare. It's not loud, it's not messy, it's precise, calculated, cold, and it works because narcissists are not strong. They're addicted to control, and once they lose access to your energy, they unravel from the inside out. In this video, you'll learn exactly how to disarm narcissists without confrontation, use silence as a psychological weapon, remove your emotional availability without appearing hostile, trigger internal collapse in the narcissist without saying a single word. This isn't about revenge. It's about regaining psychological control without conflict. It's about reclaiming your peace without giving them the satisfaction of a fight. Because when you master the art of cold silence, you don't just protect your energy. You become the one they can no longer reach, influence, or break. Let's begin. Part 1. Understanding the narcissist's fuel system. To defeat any system, you must first understand what it runs on. Narcissists don't run on logic. They don't run on truth. They run on supply, emotional fuel extracted from those around them. What kind of fuel? Attention, reaction, validation, conflict, control. It doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. As long as you respond, they win. The fight feeds them. The argument energizes them. Your pain is their satisfaction. That's why they provoke. That's why they distort the truth. That's why they create chaos, just to watch you react. The more you try to prove your worth, defend your stance, or explain your pain, the more power you hand over. Because in a narcissist's world, attention equals dominance. And your emotional energy is their survival mechanism. They don't crave connection. They crave control. And every reaction you give, even silence driven by emotional pain, feeds their sense of superiority. But here's what collapses their system. When you no longer respond, no matter what they do, that's when their entire framework starts to break. Because they don't know how to function without reaction. They can't comprehend your indifference. They panic when their tactics no longer work. They spiral when the power dynamic shifts quietly, without confrontation, without explanation. And it always starts with one thing: you cutting off their fuel. When you stop being emotionally accessible, you remove the very foundation they stand on. You stop being a source. You start becoming a wall. And walls don't argue. Walls don't validate. Walls don't bleed. That's why silence is not weakness. It's sabotage. And once you understand that a narcissist's power comes from your engagement, you begin to take back everything they thought they owned: your focus, your emotional clarity, your self-command. Now that you see what powers them, it's time to learn how to dismantle that system with silence. Part 2. Psychological silence, the weapon they can't fight. Narcissists expect two things from you: reaction and resistance. Because even when you resist them, you're still engaged, still feeding the loop, still dancing to their rhythm. But when you go completely silent, not just externally, but energetically, you break the cycle. And for a narcissist, that silence is not absence, it's psychological chaos. Here's why. 1. Silence removes their anchor point. Narcissists use your emotional response to measure their dominance. They want to know they can still trigger you, still control your mood, still dictate your inner state. But when you offer nothing, no anger, no clarification, no sadness, they're lost. They have no anchor to hold on to, no emotional reaction to manipulate, no energy to extract. Your silence becomes a black mirror, reflecting their emptiness back at them. 2. Silence triggers internal collapse. A narcissist doesn't fear confrontation. They fear being ignored. Because in silence, they're no longer the center of attention. They're no longer the puppet master. They're irrelevant, and their ego can't survive that truth. They start unraveling, not because you hurt them, but because they can't control what they can't read. 3. Silence forces them to face their own insecurity. Most narcissists live in denial, projecting their flaws onto others, avoiding self-reflection. But when you respond with nothing, they're forced to deal with what they've been running from: their own inadequacy, their lack of real power, their emotional emptiness, and the irony: you didn't even say a word. You just withdrew, and that was enough. 4. Silence confuses their manipulative strategy. Their tactics were built for reaction, guilt-tripping, gaslighting, passive aggression, emotional baiting. But none of it works when you're calm, cold, and unreadable. Now, every move they make feels ineffective. Their usual control mechanisms misfire, and their frustration grows, louder, more desperate, more obvious. They don't know how to handle a mind they can't provoke. 5. Silence is power, because it's uncontrollable. They can't interrupt it. They can't argue with it. They can't twist it into something else. It simply exists, untouchable, unwavering, unbreakable. And that's why it's the one weapon narcissists can't defend against. But silence alone is not enough. To make it lethal, you must pair it with emotional detachment, the next level of invisible power. Part 3. The power of emotional detachment, becoming untriggerable. Silence breaks the surface, but detachment disarms the core. Because a narcissist doesn't just want to hear your voice. They want to control your internal state. They want your thoughts spinning, your emotions tangled, your peace shattered. That's how they win, not through force, but through internal disruption. But when you master emotional detachment, you don't just stay quiet. You become unreachable. Here's how it works. 1. You become emotionally unavailable without cutting contact. You don't need to disappear physically. You simply stop giving emotional access. You're present, but not reactive. You listen, but don't absorb. You engage, but don't feel. The narcissist can still speak, but they're speaking to a fortress. And that alone drives them mad. 2. You stop responding from ego, start operating from strategy. They try to bait you with insults, they push buttons to provoke you. But there's no response, no ego to trigger, no identity to hijack. You observe their behavior like data, cold, clean, emotionless. That is psychological superiority. Because while they act out, you calculate. 3. You disengage energetically, not just verbally. True detachment isn't about ignoring people. It's about removing your energetic availability. No emotional spikes, no internal turbulence, no visible shift. You're still there, but they can no longer reach you. Not because you walked away, but because you've become internally sealed. 4. You stay calm while they escalate into chaos. Narcissists escalate when ignored. They'll try harder, louder, crueler, more desperate, but you remain still, not passive, controlled, not cold, disciplined. Their emotional chaos only highlights your neutrality, and that imbalance becomes unbearable for them. 5. Your peace becomes their psychological agony. When you stay detached, calm, unshaken, you mirror back their instability, and what they see is themselves, a chaotic mind bouncing off a still wall. That's what narcissists fear most, not rejection, not confrontation, but irrelevance in the presence of your emotional sovereignty. They start questioning their effect. Their ego falters, their tactics collapse, and without a trigger to exploit, you become something they can't control, and therefore can't stand. But now, to shut them down completely, you must apply the final tactic, Grey Rock method, turning yourself into psychological dead space. Part 4, Grey Rock method, how to become uninteresting and untouchable. Sometimes the most effective way to win a psychological war is to become completely boring, not dramatic, not emotional, not reactive, just emotionally flat, psychologically neutral, utterly forgettable. That's the core of the Grey Rock method, because narcissists are predators of stimulation. They seek drama, intensity, reaction, and when they don't get it, they lose interest. Fast. Here's how you use this strategy with surgical precision. 1. Remove all emotional color from your communication. No enthusiasm, no frustration, no emotional charge. Respond with flat, emotionless phrases. Okay. Sure. I don't know. All right. Keep your voice monotone, your expressions minimal, your energy zeroed out. You don't resist. You don't engage. You don't shine. You simply exist without emotional signature. 2. Make every interaction predictable and dull. Narcissists feed on unpredictability, highs and lows, tension and release. Your job is to kill that rhythm. No sarcasm, no challenge, no curiosity. Talk about surface-level topics. Give dry, mechanical answers. Be repetitive, be boring, be non-inspiring. Your goal: remove every trace of emotional stimulation from the space you occupy. 3. Never reveal what you feel or think. Narcissists love psychological intel. They want to know what excites you, scares you, makes you tick. But under Grey Rock, you give them nothing. No opinions, no dreams, no stories, no reactions. You become emotionally blank, a wall they cannot decode, and walls can't be manipulated. 4th stop. Feeding the cycle of tension release. Even subtle tension gives them energy. Even eye contact can be a form of connection. So you give them nothing to push against. No micro-reactions, no body language signals, no emotional tension, just flat presence, cold presence, strategic dead space. Eventually, they grow restless, irritated, confused, because nothing they do seems to land, and their ego begins to starve. 5. You turn their game into psychological silence. When you become emotionally uninteresting, You collapse their game without playing it. They can't fight silence. They can't manipulate apathy. They can't provoke a brick wall. And so, they either escalate to desperation, exposing themselves, or walk away, searching for a more responsive victim. Either way, you win, without confrontation, without conflict, without saying anything meaningful at all. But if you want to tilt the power dynamic completely, you'll need to master one more level: strategic psychological distance, shifting the control without a single confrontation. Part 5. How to shift the power dynamic without speaking. You don't need a confrontation to take back power. You don't need a dramatic exit, a final monologue, or a confrontation scene. You shift power silently by becoming something they can no longer reach, predict, or control. Here's how that shift happens. 1. You control the tempo. Narcissists want you emotionally urgent, reacting fast, chasing closure, over-explaining. You flip that dynamic by slowing everything down. You reply when you want, speak less, pause more. You never match their pace. You make them adapt to yours. This creates psychological imbalance. They sense the change, but can't explain it. They feel the power shift, but can't confront it. Because you didn't do anything. You simply withdrew control of tempo, and now they're off balance. 2. You stop feeding their fantasy of superiority. Narcissists need to feel superior, but you now offer no challenge, no admiration, no reaction. You act indifferent, not impressed, not threatened, not moved. They can feel it, but they can't penetrate it. They begin questioning their value, not because you attacked them, but because you stopped validating the illusion. And nothing is more devastating to a narcissist than realizing they've become emotionally irrelevant. 3. You become a mirror of their emptiness. Your silence reflects their chaos. Your calm reflects their desperation. Your detachment reflects their instability. And as they escalate to regain control, they only expose their own dysfunction louder and clearer. You didn't silence them with words. You silenced them with stillness. 4. You make them work for what you used to give freely. Attention, empathy, access, explanation. What once flowed freely is now locked. They try to provoke it. They try to earn it. But nothing works. You've reprogrammed your presence into scarcity. You've shifted from emotionally available to emotionally premium, and the scarcity creates value. But not for them anymore. 5. You become a psychological enigma. When you don't react, don't explain, don't expose your inner state, you become unreadable, and what cannot be read cannot be controlled. You've shifted from being a source of energy to being a mystery. And narcissists hate what they can't define, hate what they can't predict, hate what they can't dominate. And that's exactly why your silence is no longer defense. It has become domination. But now there's one last thing to understand. Silence is not just a strategy, it's the final stage of psychological freedom. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategic domination. You never raised your voice, you never engaged in drama, you never fought for control, and yet you won, because real power doesn't scream. It doesn't beg to be seen. It moves in silence, measured, precise, untouchable. This is what narcissists never see coming. They prepare for arguments. They anticipate emotional explosions. They expect you to fight for your place in their chaos. But instead, you disappeared into stillness. Detached, unbothered, emotionally sovereign. And that silence did what no confrontation ever could. It collapsed their illusion of control. They didn't lose you to another person. They lost you to your own clarity, to your calm, to your psychological evolution. Because silence isn't a lack of response. It's a refusal to be pulled back into dysfunction. It's not a retreat, it's redefinition. It's not avoidance, it's command. And in the end, you didn't need revenge. You didn't need closure. You didn't need to prove anything. Your silence became the final answer, the final boundary, the final act of power. And they'll remember it long after the noise fades. Because the loudest message is the one that's never spoken. You've become the presence they can't manipulate, the voice they can no longer trigger, the soul they can no longer access. Not through conflict, not through confrontation, but through silent domination. And that is a level of power most people will never reach, but you just did. Hold it, guard it, never explain it. Let your silence echo louder than their entire existence. And when they finally realize they've been defeated, without a single word from you, you'll already be gone. Untouched, unmoved, unmatched. Exactly as it should be.